I wanted to start with this video because honestly, it makes me so emotional every time, and it celebrates our beautiful, engaged learners. And of course, we want all children to be able to thrive and learn. So sleep is a big part of that. We want to make sure that children are rested, that they come to school happy, energized, and they can take opportunities that we are giving them to learn. But of course, if they're not rested, if they are let's say they haven't slept very well, they haven't slept very well at night and they woke up really early, they will come in cranky, they will have that brain fog. And of course, then learning will not happen the way it's meant to. So today, I'm going to talk to you about how to help your child to sleep like a baby, which is very ironic actually, because you know that babies don't sleep very well. So I don't know where that saying comes from actually. So I'm going to put my slides up. Okay, so how to make your child sleep like a baby, ironically. I'm going to move right into some sleep facts, then we're going to talk about some strategies, because the how-to of this presentation is what to do when your child doesn't want to sleep. And I'm sure that you've read a ton of books that are out there, you know, Cry It Out, Controlled Crying, Shush and Patting, what to do, how to do it well. So I'm going to tell you all about this, and at the end I will take your questions, because I'm sure that what I'm going to present today will not answer or will not help you in your particular situation. It will just give you a very general idea on what to do. So I'll be happy to even personalize that a little bit further. All right, so are we ready? I'll take you on this journey, and hopefully in your overtired state, you can also stay focused long enough to take in all that information. So you're probably wondering why I'm showing you all this delicious food at this hour. Well, it's not to entice you to go and buy McDonald's right after, although I'm also tempted. But bad sleep is really like junk food. What this means is that food and sleep are similar. When you're eating food, this is what goes into your body. This is what helps you grow, especially when you're a little person, you're still developing. So what kind of food you're giving them is very important. Is it vegetables? Is it proteins? So you have to make sure that that diet is balanced. But for some reason in our culture, we're not thinking the same way about sleep. So we kind of consider sleep to be like this secondary thing. If I just stay up tonight with my child and go out, have fun with friends, and the next morning they're waking up cranky, and the next following days the routine falls apart, and they're not getting enough rest, means they cannot focus, they cannot learn. So it's not just about then making it up the next day and letting your child sleep longer. That's not going to fix the problem, because a healthy sleep is not just the duration, it's the quality of the sleep. And the only way that you can make the sleep a quality sleep is to provide it within natural biological windows. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. It's called circadian rhythms. Have you ever heard of circadian rhythms? Are you familiar with them? Yes. Some of you have probably read a lot of books out there, so I'm going to just skim over it very quickly. We all get sleepy and then wakeful at different times of the day because your hormones either rise or fall. So you have this hormone called melatonin, which will make you sleepy, and another hormone called cortisol, and you're probably very familiar with it, that makes you stressed or energized. So when your body naturally starts going into that sleep mode and you start coming down, melatonin kicks in, that's when you should be sleeping. But if you push yourself a little bit further, your body's getting the message, oh, it's time to go, go, go. And so it's going to ramp up the cortisol production just to push you through that day. So this is what happens to children as well. So circadian rhythms are biological cycles that repeat every 24 hours. Actually, it's more like 25 hours. So I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where maybe back in the days when you were a student, you stayed up really late, you were studying, and then in the morning you woke up maybe around 11 a.m. because you had to make up for that sleep. Then the following night, you're not going to sleep until 1 a.m. Then you're waking up at noon. Then your sleep gets moved until 3 a.m. and so on and so forth. So this is what happens. Our biological clocks are not exactly 24 hours, so you have to reset them every day by providing enough light, enough darkness, by having meals at the right time. So if your meal, or actually your child's meal, occurs at, let's say, 7 a.m. every morning for breakfast, but they overslept, you are effectively moving that clock by an hour or 2 or 3, however long they slept. And then your entire day is moved by that amount of time. So what you want to do, really, especially with the very little babies, stay on track. Even if they had a really bad night, you wake them up at 7 a.m. Because the fact of the matter is, you can't make your child go to sleep. You won't be able to hold them down. You won't be able to close their eyes if they don't want to. They will fight you and resist you. But what you can do is wake them up. So you do that at 7 a.m. in the morning. You fix your breakfast time. You fix your lunch time. The child will get sleep at the right time at night. And then the whole pattern will likely go back on track. So why the schedule needs to be consistent also, I mentioned melatonin. It can only be produced in the dark. So especially for little children, you really need to put up blinds. It needs to be really, really dark for that melatonin to be produced. And so if they wake up later in the day, then they are getting less light. And for that reason, the whole sleep cycle will be off. So I hope that makes sense, because the next part we'll talk a little bit more about how we sleep. Okay, it takes the child about 20 to 30 minutes to fall asleep. Have you seen that little jerk sometimes after 20 minutes? That's right at the moment when they are falling into deep sleep, and you can see that straight away they plunge. They don't have that period of time where you have the light sleep, then deep sleep, light sleep. When a child falls asleep, they straight away plunge into deep sleep. And just before that happens, they get that little jerk. That's called the hypnagogic startle. If that happens to your child, you might want to stay with them a little bit longer and pat them through it so they can go back to sleep. And this is more for the very little babies. For toddlers, I think it doesn't happen so much anymore because their sleeping is a bit more mature. Okay, so you can see it goes down into deep sleep, up into awake, and you can see that little dotted line goes right up. That right at that point, your child might wake out of their sleep cycle and not be able to put themselves back to sleep. So here we have to talk about the difference between settling and resettling. These are completely different things. So you can teach a child to settle themselves for sleep, but what do they do when they wake out of that little sleep cycle there, the shallow sleep? How can they put themselves back to sleep? So you kind of need to work on both things, how to help them settle and how to help them resettle in the middle of the night. So I'm not sure if you have, do we have any children who are waking up in the middle of the night? Yes, okay, so we'll address that as well. All right. I will just skim over this very quickly because sometimes, especially with toddlers, parents don't quite know when to drop one of the naps. So I'll cover this as well very quickly. So you have, look at the amount of sleep that children need. The typical range for a 1-week-old is between 14 and 18 hours, which is pretty much all the time. and then you get very little interaction with them throughout the night and day. And then when you move up all the way to 18 months, you can see that the range is 11 to 12 hours. However, the day sleep does not equal night sleep. So you cannot combine it. If you say, for example, my child slept 4 hours in the day instead of 2, then I'll just take that out of this night sleep, and then that's going to work out. They don't equal. If you do not provide a proper nap, the night sleep will not happen, or it will be very disrupted. So one thing that you always need to remember is protect the nap. And parents always ask me, what happens if the nap doesn't happen? Can I give them a little nap a little later? Terrible idea. What happens then is children don't have enough pressure to sleep before nighttime, and they'll fall asleep really late, 10 p.m., 11 p.m., etc. So if you have a child who still needs a nap, you need to make it happen before 3 p.m. If it's after 3 p.m., you're guaranteed to have your entire night's sleep ruined. So protect the naps, make them age appropriate, and make them on time. Remember those sleepy windows that open up? If you miss them, you have an overtired child for whom the cortisol levels have kicked in and they really can't come down now. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about what affects children's ability to sleep. Apart from medical conditions, which are very important, and you should always address them first, there are also other situations. So I always talk to parents, and very respectfully, because I know you're just trying to survive. It's so hard to have an overtired child, and it's been days, and you also need sleep. And so little practices just kind of creep in over time, and the child wants more, and you started carrying, but in a little while it's bouncing, and now it's bouncing, dancing, and singing, and then it's balancing on one leg. So it just creeps in little by little. You won't notice before now you're really stuck in a situation that you can't continue. Contact sleeping, for example, beautiful. It gives you so much joy. You know, it's such a precious time with your baby. But will you be able to continue that until they're 3, 4? So this is something definitely you need to think about before you put those practices in place. So these little patterns of behavior that help your child fall asleep are called sleep associations. And I wanted to explain also what that means in an adult scenario. Okay, so you can really feel what that feels for a child. So you have a baby who is used to being bounced, rocked, and carried to sleep. As an adult, you also have sleep associations like this, but of course no one's carrying you or bouncing you around, although it would be lovely. But you might have your favorite pillow. You might have like a cold side of the bed that you like to sleep on, aircon. You know, without that thing, you can't sleep. Or even sometimes, you know, I had one person tell me, I need my husband's leg on top of me, otherwise I won't fall asleep. So what would happen if suddenly you woke up in the middle of the night and you're on the kitchen floor? Your bed is nowhere near and you have no idea what happened. And you kind of get up, you go back to sleep. 2 hours later, you wake up on the kitchen floor. What's going on? So you'll go back to sleep, but you'll kind of sleep with one eye open just to find out what's happening. It's the same thing for children. So if they're used to bouncing, rocking, singing, patting, etc., in the middle of the night, when that little dotty line goes up, they will suddenly realize, hold on, something's weird. I'm not being bounced, I'm not being rocked, and they will call out for you to reestablish that association. Because in their little minds, they're convinced this is the only way to sleep. There's no other way. That's all I know. So then it becomes a really big problem for parents to work on changing those associations. And I have a couple of methods that I will discuss a little bit later. All right, so actually discuss them now. So we have gentle or cry it out. I have so many parents asking me, so which one is the right method? And some parents say, I'm an attachment kind of parent. Some parents say, I'm very authoritarian. And I work with all sorts of parents, and I don't see any one method as better than the other, except for the duration. So if you have a really exhausted parent, you would not be suggesting a method that will take 4 weeks to accomplish. So some methods, they also work, but they will take you like a month or two. And other method that will just take a week and you're done, but they will be really intense and you have to be super strong because, let's be honest, who likes to listen to a baby cry, right? And there's a research actually which talks about how women react to babies crying. Apparently for women it's a very visceral experience. You feel it with your whole bodies. It's pain. Sometimes it's physical pain. Not to say anything about daddies who are amazing and you also help and you're there. It's fantastic, but it's a biological thing. So it's very important to first ask yourself, what kind of parent am I? How exhausted am I? Especially if you are depressed. And that's very normal, because if you're not having any sleep for months and months and you haven't seen your friends and you don't feel like yourself, then you will be depressed. And then it's important to choose a method that will help you do it fast. So, having said that, I have to mention that no method is completely tear-free, except for feed to sleep. And that will only take you as far if you're breastfeeding. You can feed your baby all the way to sleep, and even then you might not be able to put them down, they will cry. So there's no such thing as no cry solutions. I'll show you exactly what I mean. I'll skip that one very quickly. So these are the sleep training methods. You have the no cry, but as I mentioned, there's no such thing. And on the other end, you have cry it out, CIO, or extinction. And in the middle, you have shush and pat, pick up, put down, or put down, where you can stay with the child, which is great for parents who are kind of looking for something in the middle. Gradual withdrawal and controlled crying or fading. You might be familiar with these methods, but what's important is how you do it. I have, again, many parents saying, this didn't work for me, but when we really talk about it, they will say, we did it like this, and then I realized, oh, that would have been very confusing for the baby. So I want to tell you a little bit more about how to do it well and what to pay attention to. But before we do that, I'll go back a little bit, because we have to talk about crying, which is a very touchy subject, I would say. Parents tend to react to the child crying and almost instinctually, right? You want to comfort them, you want to go and be with them. And especially in the middle of the night, if they're crying, you want to be there so that they're not scared, they don't feel abandoned, right? However, just by going in, if the child is not really crying really hard, you might be disrupting their sleep because they won't resettle. They will just simply look for you to come in and save the situation, and they won't ever learn that it's okay, I'm safe in my cot, I can just go right back to sleep. So there are a few types of crying to differentiate. You have the whimper, which is just mild fussing. It's more like complaining. You have the cry, which is a strong yelp that summons your attention. You have the shriek, which is a mild desire plus impatience, really. It's like the kind of crying that you hear during vaccination. And then there's mantra cry, which is just like soothing yourself to sleep. And all babies do that. This is how they communicate. They don't have words. So the only way they can show you what they want, how they are feeling, is through crying. So not all crying is the same. It's very important that you don't go in if a baby is doing mantra crying. They're just trying to put themselves to sleep. And also, if it's whimpering, like mild fussing, that's also not the time to go in, because you will just disrupt them. They will get that social input, they will get stimulated, they're up. So fussy babies will go straight to shrieking, and their own crying makes them more upset. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle of crying. So don't jump in too fast. Hold back a little bit. Deliberately letting a baby cry for the sake of crying is not appropriate, and I'm not saying that you should do that, but you should be looking at the types of crying that the baby is displaying. Really, the only way that I know to avoid a lot of crying is to get really good at this, surfing the wave. So this is a bit of an analogy. When babies get sleepy, they display drowsy signs, but then that very quickly turns into fatigue signs. So drowsy signs are very subtle. You would see suddenly a decrease in activity. The child gets less animated. They're a bit more quiet. Maybe they're staring into space. You know, they were so active and suddenly they're just still. So you would know that that's a window opening. And if you put them down to sleep at that particular time, it will be so much easier. They will not fight you so much. But if you miss that by a second, they switch into fatigue signs. And then you will have some of the things that parents actually interpret as my child is tired. Well, actually, they're overtired at that point. So that's irritability, being cranky, pulling ears, drooping head, rubbing eyes, clinging, peevish, etc., short fuse. So this is actually when it's too late. So the best thing you can do is really observe your child and see what is your child's unique way of showing you that they are becoming fatigued before they get to that overtired stage. Oh, apologies about that. There we go. Okay. So this is the sure way to put a baby down without fighting. They might cry a little bit, but it will be short, and then they will be down quickly. So going back to the sleep training methods, I'm going to discuss a few that I find really effective. This method actually is something that we use in infant care on the youngest babies. And actually, you shouldn't be using it past 3 months, but I'll tell you what, they love it. They love being patted on their little bottoms and shushed. So I'm not going to tell you not to do it with older children, but it's not very effective after about 6 months. So what you do is you put your child in the cot in a side sleep position, just the way he's holding the child there on their side. You're shushing near their ear, but not into the ear because you don't want to damage the eardrums. You want to shush past it. And you tap, and the tapping is very important. So again, you should do it just right, otherwise it's not going to work. It's not that the method is not working, but our execution might not be adequate. So the patting is quite forceful, actually. I don't want to use the word forceful, but it's stronger than what you might think. So I'm going to demonstrate on myself, okay? The patting should sound like this. So it's not very gentle, and it should be like the tick-tock of the clock. And then you'd go, shh, shh. Some children like to be patted on their backs. That's why you use the side sleep position. Some babies like to be patted on their bottoms, which is, probably most of them prefer that. And sometimes just the mattress. You can pat the mattress, and just that vibration of the mattress will put them to sleep. The reason why this is so effective, especially in the first 3 months, is because there's this theory that children are born a little bit too soon compared to other mammals. So technically, this is their 4th trimester. They need to be, the conditions that they have in the womb need to be recreated. So the swaddling is the tightness of the womb. Then you have the side or stomach position. They don't actually lie on their backs in the womb. You know, they're sometimes curled up, but usually on the side position. Then the shushing is the whooshing sound of your womb. The suckling is very important. So a lot of parents ask me, dummies or no dummies? Dummies. Yes, dummies are great. Babies need non-nutritive suckling. This is something they can do with their fingers. Sometimes they might put their thumbs in their mouths, but not the very little babies. They can't do that yet. I can cover dummies later if you like, but I'm going to leave it there. And what this does all together, these 5 universal womb sensations, is that it turns on the calming reflex. And then the baby will straight away stop crying and they will go to sleep. Another thing to watch out for is, of course, SIDS. So this is something I need to include as a sleep consultant. We need to be safe. So even though you're putting the baby to sleep in a side position, please remember to put them down on their backs before you leave. This is up to 12 months. After that time, you can choose to continue back sleeping, but babies should be fine at that point. All right. So controlled crying has a very bad reputation among parents because I think the idea about controlled crying is all wrong. We're not trying to make the baby cry and cry and cry and cry until they are traumatized. Okay? There are a number of stressors, or maybe rather levels of stress that a person can experience, right? There's very easy stress, that's like everyday things, you know, something went wrong at work. For a baby, it might be, I wanted that toy and the person didn't give it to me. Then you have the stronger stressor, which would be somebody's death or divorce. This is something that you'll learn how to cope with, but it's quite upsetting. It will take a long time to get over. And then there's really toxic stress, which comes from abuse. So for babies, the stress that they are experiencing during controlled crying, if it is done well, is on the very mild side. It's just that they are protesting. They want to show you, this is not how I go to sleep. What are you doing? You know how we do this? And so they can't quite understand what's going on. What you're doing, and I think it's important to remind yourself as well, I'm trying to help you, to teach you how to go to sleep. And sleeping is not a skill we are born with. This is something we learn. So if we don't put these patterns, these practices in place very early on, you have a very hard time later. And of course into your adulthood as well. So I just wanted to also mention that this, even though it's called controlled crying, it results in less crying, just because it ends sooner. It may be very confusing for a baby if you're doing the gentle methods. It depends on their personality. I always ask the parent about the child's personality before I work with them. So if they are very easy, angel type of baby, then really they can go either way. Very fussy babies are better off doing controlled crying because it will end sooner. And even if you're doing gentle methods, they will still cry. It will just take so much longer. So, and it depends on the parent, because if you're an attachment parent and you don't agree with this and this is making you very uncomfortable, you shouldn't do it because you're not going to do it right. Okay, the con is that, ironically, even though I wrote it's less crying, it may result in a lot of crying and stress for parents if not done right. And there's no room for inconsistency. So the common mistakes. How to do controlled crying, first of all. You would be walking into the room, making sure that the environment is set. If you do not prepare the environment, if there's light coming through, for example, then it's not a conducive space for a child to sleep. So what you want to do is set it up well. Put your white noise on. I would recommend that up to maybe 12 months and then just phase it out. It's not really useful. So your white noise, your environment is ready. You've done your routine leading up to sleep. So you have to make sure that it's really stellar and it doesn't take too long or it's not too short, but it really relaxes your baby. One thing that happens to our bodies when we're falling asleep is the temperature drops. So the best way to mimic that is to give the child a bath or a shower. So if you give a warm shower and that temperature comes down, they naturally get sleepy. So it's just mimicking that, getting them in the right mood. You might want to do kisses and stories, etc. Once you've done that, you give them a kiss, you put them in the cot, and you say, Mommy, we'll see you tomorrow, or have a lovely rest. Give them a kiss, you leave. Then you use the timing from the Ferber book. Are you familiar with the Ferber book? Yep. You will see that there's like a little table. It starts with like 2-minute intervals, 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, 20 minutes. It will break it down for you in days. So the next day you would start at a longer interval. But the thing is, you start the timer from the moment your child cries. And what happens for a lot of parents who say, this didn't work for me, is because they're hearing whimpering or the mantra crying, and they reset the timer then. But actually, you're supposed to wait until the child is really upset and really calling out for you, like that vaccination kind of cry. Otherwise, it's not going to work because you're walking in too soon. And what happens around 9 months is children are learning to cry until the point where you come back. So they know, they're so clever. They know you're gonna come back after a certain time, so they'll just cry up until that point when you come back. For older children, if you're using controlled crying, then I would suggest starting at a longer interval straight away. 20 minutes, just because they're so smart and they will know if you come back every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes, it will take hours. So start from about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, another thing is when you come in and you do a bit of a hybrid and you're trying to calm the child down on the check-ins, the intervals, but you're actually calming them down until they fall asleep, or you're calming them down until they are drowsy. I feel that is a mistake, because you want, the whole point of this whole controlled crying method is to teach your child to settle themselves. So what happens if you come in and pat them until they fall asleep? They didn't settle themselves. You just let them cry for such a long time to then undo everything just because you got them to the point that they were supposed to reach by themselves. And one last thing is the importance of a good nap schedule, that the baby's not hungry, that the sleep environment is set up, that there are no associations like rocking and holding. You would have to work on those first before you actually proceed on to controlled crying. So any questions here? We're good? Can proceed to the next one. Okay. So PU, PD, PD, PD. So pick up, put down, and put down, put down. This is best after 5 months old. The shush and patting can be combined as well, but you might also want to do it for the first few days and not any longer, because children get very fond of that method, and then it's very hard to phase it out again. So that patting will not be effective by 6 months. The best thing you can do is use your touch and your voice first. Then you would gradually withdraw the touch and only use your voice. So you might want to develop a phrase and, for example, say, "It's okay, darling, you're just going to sleep," or "Don't worry, you're going to have a lovely rest and I'll see you in the morning," or something like that. "Mommy loves you." It could be very simple. Then after a while, without the patting, you're moving that away. You're just saying, "Mommy loves you, it's time to sleep." The child will learn to just take that voice cue and fall asleep from that. So in the middle of the night, you can just pop your head and say, "Oh, Mommy loves you, go back to sleep." You yourself can go back to sleep as well. If you are picking your child up to comfort them, make it a very boring cuddle. So children are looking for you to pick them up and interact, right? If you start bouncing them, rocking them, kissing them, looking them in the eye, they're like, "This is great. We're having a connection. We're gonna play now. It's gonna be fun." So what you want to do is pick up very mechanically, just give a little cuddle. Don't say anything. Don't bounce, don't jiggle. Do not talk. And do not have eye contact with them, because that will just wake them up. So again, Put them down when they are calm but not drowsy. That is their job to do. They are learning to put themselves to sleep. Okay, and this is very important. What to do with yourself when your child is in the cot and you're there to support them. You can stay in the room, right? You can pick them up, give them a boarding cuddle. The moment they come down, you put them down. And what do I do with myself? If you're standing over the cot, the child will, of course, not come down. So you might want to bring a chair for the younger ones who are not yet standing up. You might want to just sit down and either look down or just up or hum. You can sing. Just don't look at them. Don't interact, because you're giving them that space to calm down and go to sleep. You're there. You're still present. You're not hurting them by removing your presence, and you're supportive. It's just that you want them to get the message. It's time to sleep, and this is how you do it. When you have a child who's already pulling themselves up, that's a different situation. You might want to be on a cushion by the cot. This is because the child naturally tends to be at the level of your face, right? So if you're sitting on the floor, they're less likely to keep pulling themselves up, and they'll just put their head down to be closer to your face and then fall asleep because their head is already on the mattress. So it's a little trick of the trade. And another thing that I want to mention is the throwing of the dummy, which happens very often when they are frustrated. They will just take it out and throw it. And if you go to retrieve it straight away, they'll think it's a fun game. And that's the worst situation you can get yourself into, because they will not stop. They'll just keep throwing it. And if you don't give it back, they will cry. So to combat that, you might want to pick up the dummy, wait for a little while, maybe like a minute, put it on the mattress, not in the child's hand, not in the child's mouth. Put it on the mattress so that they can pick it up and then put it in their mouth themselves. And then after a while, they will stop throwing it. So any questions here? Oh, the put down, sorry. I just mentioned pick up, put down, but put down is for those children who are pulling themselves up or can stand, and then naturally they will not lie down. They will just keep standing and calling you. So what you can do is put your arm underneath the child's leg, like this, and then put your other arm behind their back and gently put them down. Then they will get up, they will cry again. Say, it's okay, you're just going to sleep. Put your arm underneath the knees, and the other arm behind the back, and gently put them down again. If you do it several times, they'll be so tired of getting up all the time that they'll just lie down, they will get the message, they will know it's time to sleep, they will fall asleep. Okay, I think this is the last one that also works for infants, and I have one more that will only work for toddlers and older children. Okay, so gradual withdrawal, I think, is best after 8 or 9 months when children can understand a little bit better. So this is basically starting at the cot. You can use the pick up, put down, but then gradually moving away from the cot over several days. So in days 1 to 3, you would be at the cot. You would be using your voice, your touch. You can pat and shush. You can do pick up, put down. And after 3 days, you would want to have no touch and just your voice. Just keep reminding them, singing to them, saying it's time to go to sleep. So in 3-day intervals, then you would gradually move away from the cot. This takes a very long time, and you have to be very consistent. And even if it's going well, you wouldn't just one day pick up your cushion or your chair and leave. You still have to go through the entire process so that the child can get used to you being further and further away. And the last stage would be you're behind the door, and every now and then you just pop your head in so they know you're there. There's another way to do this. It's a little cheeky, and it will work with the older children as well, like 18 months and up. It's you'd have to do a bit of pretending. Okay, so you would go in and say, it's time to go to sleep, put them in the bed, and say, I just need to pop out to do something. So first you leave just for like 10 seconds so they are comfortable. Then you come back, spend some time with them. It's like, I really need to take a shower. So you go and take a shower, but you come back. Then you come up with another excuse. I would just suggest that you never use the sibling, because that creates some sibling rivalry. So you wouldn't want to say, for example, oh, I need to tend to the baby again. You know how he cries, so I have to leave and then I'll come back. Don't do that. I think it's best to just say, I need to get myself a sandwich, or I just need a glass of water, I need to go to the toilet. So it's a bit cheeky. It will not work with every child, but some children are actually easy enough that they will be like, yeah, okay, mommy has her own business, and then she'll come back every now and then. Until it's one of the check-ins, they'll just be asleep because they just got bored of waiting for you to come back. So this is the last one. This is for the toddlers specifically, and children who are maybe 3, 4, even older. It's called the 4 R's. So it's a role play, rewards, rules, and sometimes some attachment parents do not like the word rules. Then you can use the word manners, your bedtime manners instead of bedtime rules. And returns are silent returns. So you would be looking at a combination of 3 of these. You can choose. The role play is basically, and especially effective with like 18-month-olds, etc. They might want to see how I should be sleeping, right? So you might want to take a doll and a little cot, and put the doll in the cot and say, it's time to go to sleep. Remember, stay in your bed. And then in the morning when you come back and you can see your child is not in the bed, but the doll stayed, you might say, oh, this is fantastic. You stayed in the bed. You're such a good baby. Here's your sticker. And you might turn to your child and say, oh, but you didn't manage to stay in your bed, so maybe try again tomorrow and you'll also get a sticker. So it's just showing what happens when you go to sleep. Let's go take a shower with the dolly, or the dolly is now having her dinner because soon she'll be going to sleep. So you might want to walk them through your entire sleep routine depending on what it is. Children respond really well to that, and then they also see where your values lie. Because if you say, oh, you're such a clever little baby doll, you brushed your teeth and you did this and that, and now you're ready for sleep, well done. They will get that this is what you want from them because they practiced it with a doll. The next thing is rewards. And this is a tricky one because a lot of parents use rewards incorrectly. It's either the reward is too big, or it's too small, or there's too much time. So what you really need to do is start with something very achievable. For example, you put on your pajamas, great, here's your sticker, right? And then once they've got that and they're doing it really confidently, then the next goal will be you put your pajamas on, brushed your teeth, and you're in bed by 8 p.m. Fantastic, here's your reward. You might also want to consider how you are providing that gratification. It needs to be immediate. Children don't have so much patience that they can wait a week. So if you're good today, in a week's time we're going to go to the zoo, that's not going to work. They will forget about it. But you might want to, with older children, work towards that reward. So for example, if you get 5 stickers, we go to the zoo together. And I think these rewards are best. Something to do with the family, a nice dinner, something that you like that I'm going to cook or make for breakfast, pancakes for breakfast, right? Rather than toys. But if you are giving them toys, they need to be small. Something, not like a huge robot or like the doll you wanted for Christmas. It's going to be something really small, like a fun little eraser or a cool pencil with a pom-pom. And you can also put it somewhere on the shelf and say, tomorrow morning, when I come in, you're in your bed, your reward will be waiting here for you. And then he can, or she can remind herself, looking at the shelf, it's there, that's the thing I'm working for. Because once it's out of sight, children forget. So doing the rewards right is very, very important. Also, use them only for about 3 weeks, because after that they will not be effective and the child gets bored. It's like, oh, we've had fun with this, but now what's new? So beyond 3 weeks, they should already develop the habit anyway. So you can just scrap the poster, the reward poster, whatever you're doing, and just say you're doing this so well right now, you don't need any help, you're a big boy or big girl. On the right side, I couldn't find a really good example, but this is Harrison's sleep rules. So these are the rules and the manners. This is something also to remind the older children what they're meant to be doing at sleep time. I wouldn't recommend this for the younger toddlers, but like 2 years or 2.5 and up, this will be perfect. You might have to revisit this every now and then because there's different sleep regressions, etc. The 18-month sleep regression is the worst. So even though you had a really good sleeping pattern, all of a sudden it will fall apart. You might actually find yourself looking at this solution. So you would involve the child. You would go to the store, buy paper, stationery, decorate it together. You can see that Harrison used stickers and all sorts of stuff. You can buy glitter. And these are very simple, only 3 rules. And they were made together with the family. So he had an input. He could say, for example, part of the bedtime rules is my teddy bear gets to sleep with me. That's reasonable, we can put that in. Mom would say, and you have to be in your pajamas by 7:30 p.m. Okay, let's put that in. So it's collaborative. And then the most important part that parents usually miss, like we've made the poster, we put it up, it's not working. But did you get excited about it? You have to be excited. You have to go to the teachers and say, hey, do you know what? Harrison has this sleep poster and I'm going to bring it and we're going to show it during show and tell and he's going to tell you all about it. And then, I don't know, a merchant at the store, hey, do you know that Harrison has a sleep poster? Anybody who will listen, tell them, and he will then understand, this is important, this is a big deal. So you talk about it constantly, you refer to it, you don't just put it on the wall and forget about it, it's not going to work. Another thing is be reasonable. If you put an abstract thing like point number 3, go to sleep. So abstract for a child. What do you mean? How do I go to sleep? But if you put there, I close my eyes and I stay still, that's achievable. That's something I can do, I understand. But go to sleep is very abstract. So you have to also think about how you're formulating these. Okay, oh, I forgot to mention, very, very important, please never take rewards away and don't use them as bribe and don't nag. This is very important because some parents like, remember the poster. Remember that poster? Every morning, every afternoon, every night they hear about like, if you don't do it, it's on the poster, you have to. So that becomes nagging. Just get excited about it, make it fun. All right, another thing that I would also recommend for this age group, which is not part of the 4 R's, is nests. So you can make a nest near your bed. If you don't want to, let's say your child has been co-sleeping, right? It's very hard to get them to sleep by themselves in the bed. If you don't mind them being in the room and you are so tired, you're depressed, you're just not feeling up to going through this whole cry it out, posters, etc. You're like, I just need my space on the bed and I need him to learn to sleep independently. And then you can make something called a nest. So right next to your bed in your bedroom, you would make like a little, like a fort, like pillows or mats, etc. And you would say to the child, you're going to sleep in your room today, but if at any point in the night you feel like you want to come back or you're uncertain, you're anxious, you can come in as quiet as a mouse and lie down in the nest. If you do it really quietly and I don't hear you, you can stay. But if I hear you, we're going to do a silent return. So a silent return is, again, very boring and mechanical. Your child wakes you up in the middle of the night, you go back, you don't say anything, you don't give them eye contact, You don't talk. You don't say, "Oh, not again," because that's also interaction. It's very boring. Take them by the hand. You go back to bed. Put them down. Give them a kiss and leave. And if they do it really, really quietly, they can stay. So that's one idea. Although I wouldn't recommend it because then you have to think about how to break that little habit later. It's best to just stop, to just give them rules or do controlled crying rather than the nests. But for some parents who are really exhausted, this will work. And a lot of parents ask me about the sleep trainer clocks. Have you heard about them? You can kind of set them up so that they light up green or they ring out when it's time to leave the bedroom. So for these clocks, there's also a way to use them and not use them. You have to do it right. First, you would want to set the clock to the time that they normally wake, just to give them a bit of a sense of accomplishment. So if they wake at 7 a.m. religiously, set it to 7 a.m., rings, yay, good job, you did it. Here's the reward, and tomorrow we're gonna try again, and it's gonna be a little longer. You can also practice it during the day and say, we're just gonna pretend. We're gonna pretend that we're sleeping, and then when the clock rings, that's when we can leave the room. So that role play is very, very important for the older children. You might also want to move that clock, after it's going well, you move that clock 5, 10, 15 minutes forwards so that the child can get used to waiting for the ringing instead of waking up with the ringing. They get the idea, they know we celebrate when the alarm clock rings and I'm in the bed. So then if you move it by 5 minutes, they'll wake up and like, oh, it didn't ring. They'll wonder for a little while. You'd be right outside the door just waiting like to bust in and celebrate. And then when it rings, come in, celebrate. Yeah, you did it. You're amazing. You're so clever. So small increments are best. Do it slowly. I don't think they're particularly a good idea, but for some children they work really well. Depends on your child. So again, I've mentioned sits. This is very, very important for the very little babies. I know parents like to put bumpers in the cots or, a lovey, but we actually still don't know what causes SIDS. Ever since the Back to Sleep, so Sleeping on the Back campaign has kicked in, there have been so many less deaths. So there's something to it, and I think it's better to be safe than sorry. So until 12 months, do try not to co-sleep with children. If you do, that's your choice, and that's absolutely fine. Just be safe about it. No loose beddings. Make sure they're not overheating as well, and make sure that the baby is on your side, not between the parents. So as a sleep consultant, I have to add this just to make sure that you're being safe. And that's it. Well, that was a lot of information, I realize. And I know that you have your own struggles that you're probably will be addressing maybe even tonight. But if I can help you with something, happy to take questions.